So UCLA's got their starting guard from the portal, but who can they get that can immediately improve / add some depth to the front court?
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Locked On UCLA podcast. I'm your host, Zach Anderson Yoxsimer. Thanks for making this show your first listen each and every day. It's free wherever you get your podcast, and it's available on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe, download. Thanks for your support to your team every day. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Go check it out. And where we get started today, as always, it's transfer portal season. Mick Cronin made the big swing, arguably, of the portal season so far. There have been some big swings. I know St. John's got somebody. You could argue that the top-rated recruit was already headed somewhere else, but Donovan Dent, who the Mountain West Player of the Year, could have gone to Kentucky, could have gone to Gonzaga, ended up with UCLA, which means they have some NIL swing power, and the Bruins won a big recruiting war in the early stages of transfer portal recruiting. So now UCLA has to pivot. They have to look to what's the next steps to make this team even better, because we've seen 4 Bruins head into the transfer portal. Heading into the weekend, Sebastian Mack was the 4th Bruin from UCLA's roster to head to the portal, and they brought one in. While we're not confirmed whether Aday is returning, maybe that would be the expectation. There's been nothing confirmed pro or against. I would just be on the assumption at this moment, with no new knowledge of the situation, that he's coming back. And if he doesn't, that'd be big news, and UCLA's got to go after a high-profile big man. UCLA stands to improve their front court by looking after a couple of guys. One of the guys I saw that John Rothstein reported was that UCLA might be going after the former Fighting Illini player, Morez Johnson Jr. All right? According to Morez's agent, he's on the market. And after what was a puzzling situation in Illinois, where it seemed like he was returning, seemed like after his freshman year, a guy hailing from the state of Illinois, a guy that was committed to the Fighting Illini for years, leaves Illinois after a year. And when he was injured was one of the reasons why Illinois didn't play as well. When Illinois was extremely healthy under Coach Underwood this year, they felt like a very dominant team and one of the better teams in the Big Ten. You look at his size, a 6'9" freshman, 250 in 28 games overall this season, was a dominant force where he shot 64%, averaged 7 points, nearly 7 rebounds a game, played 30 games overall, almost 18 minutes per game. And was a big-time rebounder, solid shot blocker, and kind of fits the same, numbers, if you look at by a height, a width, what he can do standpoint, but at a little better rate, much better rate, arguably, than William Kyle III, where he was 6'9", an undersized big man coming from the Summit League. And then you look at Morez Johnson Jr.'s numbers, and he's like, wow, well, that's kind of the same thing William Kyle brought as a guy who does it at a better rate and did it while starting a few games for, when healthy, a premier Big Ten team, in my opinion, in Illinois. This is what Morez did against UCLA. He had 8 points, 6 rebounds in 20 minutes and started. He also started against the Big Ten champs in Michigan State, 17 points, 5 boards, then got hurt and missed a month and did not return until the Big Ten tournament and played off the bench in those games in the Big Ten tournament and in the NCAA tournament for Illinois. Okay? So this is a guy when healthy from a strong stretch for Illinois at the end of January to mid-February, was pretty dominant, had 4 double-figure scoring nights. The thing that causes me hesitation about this Morez situation is looking at a couple different podcasts, looking at Sonny's job from Locked On Illini. He does a great job with that Locked On Fighting Illini podcast. I watched Sonny. I watched what he had to say about the situation. It looked like he was set NIL-wise, right? You see how UCLA has had these guys in agreement with NIL deals? That's what Morez Johnson's situation was at Illinois. And despite an NIL agreement, it actually turned, and he's now in the transfer portal. Watching the Sleepers Media podcast discussing about how the Illinois Inquirer was talking about the situation, there are some funny things about what he thought his role might be, Morez specifically, with the Illinois system. And I wonder if this is a guy that's begging for more. The numbers beg for more. Seems like a perfect fit for what UCLA needs next year in Morez Johnson Jr. Of course, everybody would love a guy like this, but specifically for UCLA, height, stature, what he can do well would perfectly mix in for UCLA if he's willing to take a role that would see him start on the bench this next season and could potentially flourish as a starter, maybe as a small ball 5. You push Bilodeau to the 4, Daly to the 3, or he rotates in at some point. I'm not sure, but if he's willing to accept that role, then that would be a match made in heaven, and UCLA should shell out the NIL dollars and bring him over. But considering what I was watching, what I've been reading, what I've been hearing, UCLA's in on him, like many teams are and should be, but just how it ended and how it switched so quickly, and I'm not sure if any of those rumors are true about what his role might be, but with the quick switcheroo, one wonders, hey, one guy comes over, expects a big role. How is that going to jive with Mick Cronin? Because Mick Cronin is going after guys, he says, talent over continuity, all right? So there you go see William Kyle III gone. You go see Devin Williams after a redshirt year gone. Dylan Andrews, one of his favorite guys to play the last couple of years, gone. Sebastian Mack, one of the toughest guys on the roster, is also gone. So Mick Cronin's going to go out and recruit some guy who might be spewing nonsense. This isn't necessarily Morez Johnson at this point that I'm talking about. Just any guy that's expecting a role greater than what he will. Cronin's not afraid to bench that guy. So while I believe Johnson provides exactly what UCLA needs, if you include Aday Mata returning, I'm not sure if that's a fit if it doesn't work out. Because he could go to another team. He could go play at USC, where they were a little undersized last year, but were very physical, and maybe he gets a bigger role there. He could go elsewhere in the Big Ten. He could go anywhere in the country and flourish in a starting role with maybe a lot of money and become the man. He wouldn't be that, I think, at UCLA right away. While the intangibles fit exactly what UCLA needed and was missing last year, a physical elite rebounder, and kind of in a William Kyle sense, needed a little more scoring out of that role at a better rate, a little better skill set. That's what Morez Johnson Jr. brings. Unfortunately, I'm not sure if that's the right move. You could also go look at maybe a skilled finesse big man like Zvonimir Ivisic from Arkansas, the prize recruit for Coach Cal at Kentucky that followed him to Arkansas. This is a guy that's 7'2", has 2 years of eligibility left, scored 27 in his season high against Alabama, had to have a delayed start to his freshman campaign, just like Aday Mata did a little bit as well. In his 2 years, averaged about 7.5 points. Could shoot the 3 a little bit. This is Ivisic now I'm talking about, the former Kentucky Wildcat, former Arkansas Razorback. If he comes to UCLA, that's a scoring finesse man that could start as the 5, and then you bring Mata off the bench, and you would mix in a more physical finesse with a shooting finesse, and that's how Cronin could rotate and play with the small ball guys and Daly and Bilodeau in rotating roles, maybe as the 3 or as the 4. So Ivisic is a guy to look at. Now, there hasn't exactly been any reports that UCLA is looking at Ivisic. He just went to the transfer portal. Reading John Rothstein, they are looking at Johnson like everybody should be, Morez Johnson from Illinois. Ivisic would be unique, and it would represent a movement away from Mick Cronin's bully ball, small, big man mentality of I want physical, defense, elite rebounding, heart and hustle. And not that Ivisic doesn't represent heart and hustle, but that's a little less physicality than Mata was showing last year, right? He was, let me bully in, okay? But you could have one guy that's more physical in Mata, have a guy who is a bit more finesse and more of a shooter in Ivisic from Arkansas, and maybe that could be a combo. You go back and forth, and you let your other guys go get the rebounds. Your 3, your 4 guys. But still, I'm not sure if that, despite the height, despite the size of Ivisic could bring in the shooting from that spot that UCLA doesn't have, it doesn't shore up the lack of rebounding that UCLA could not get against Tennessee in their second-round loss in Lexington, Kentucky. Which is why Morez Johnson Jr. would be a great fit for UCLA if things aligned and he wants to accept a role that UCLA at this moment could provide. Now, the funny thing is, Mick Cronin could be like last year and say, Aday, you're coming off the bench. We would start small with Morez Johnson Jr., put Bilodeau at the 4 and Daly at the 3, and that would be a unique role right there. That would be a very interesting lineup if they got a guy like Morez and put him in the starting lineup and kept Mata coming off the bench. Now, I know the fans, even some of the UCLA media members, even I was confused as to why can't they just start Mata and just use him for more minutes and then bring guys off the bench when he gets tired or, dare I say, in foul trouble to give him lengthy breathers in the middle of the first half rather than him come in the middle of the first half. Well, that's Cronin, and at the moment he's going after guys in the portal to get better. Next, maybe UCLA could go after, as I've said, the former Aztec San Diego State center, Magoon Guath. I talked about him a couple of podcasts ago, Mountain West Freshman of the Year, Mountain West Defensive Player of the Year, in his now soon-to-be redshirt sophomore year, a guy that's looking more Michigan, might be looking more Kentucky, and potentially a return to San Diego State. If UCLA says, hey, we can shell out a couple of dollars and convince you to come north, that would be a significant and immediate impact to the roster to get a guy like Guath, very young, very talented, who was very under-recruited and became maybe not a superstar, but a very key piece to San Diego State's NCAA tournament team this season. And if they get him to return, San Diego State could be a really good team in the Mountain West next year with some of the coaches and some of those players leaving. So I would prefer overall you get Johnson fits what UCLA needs. Guath would be a super athletic, dominant force in the paint for UCLA. And Ivisic would represent a finesse back and forth play with Mata in Mick Cronin style. Not sure if that would jive. Those are some of the big men, trying to see who UCLA would go after. But those are things the Bruins might pivot towards in this current moment. Certainly a lot more big men. You can throw out Oscar Clough. You can throw out guys that haven't committed yet in the center or power forward position that Mick Cronin might move them into a center in his lineup, a la Cody Riley, right? 6'9", undersized, but can power his way through like UCLA did to a Final Four berth. The Bruins do need somebody who can rebound and is tough. I just wonder where Cronin's going to go after and who fits what he needs. Speaking of tough and going after what you want, Cori Close and UCLA got their revenge against LSU and are awaiting their Final Four opponent at the recording of this podcast. So let's talk about what it means for UCLA for the first time in the NCAA era of women's college basketball to make the Final Four. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets whenever your first $5 bet wins. 200 extra bucks to use in everything from buzzer beaters, Cinderella stories, and even who's cutting down the nets. With the FanDuel app, it's super simple to use. When you win, you'll get paid instantly. And with the tournament games still happening on throughout the week, all those games on, there's always something exciting to bet on. Visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. All right, here we are, cruising on to segment 2. UCLA and the women's basketball team, they are heading to Tampa. They are Final Four ready. They got their matinee Sunday afternoon primetime matchup in Spokane, took down the LSU Tigers, a coach with a championship pedigree, some championship players, some tough players on that Tiger roster, some of the key players were important figures in UCLA falling short in the Sweet 16. And a lot of it came at the expense of Cori Close. Isn't ready, is not good enough. UCLA got to the Elite Eight in 2018. And last year, as I also did think, they fell well short of expectations with what they did in the non-conference. With what they did in the conference play, with the players they had, the players like Charisma Osborne finishing her career, they fell just a bit short. Now, as a nice rev up from missing the tournament to getting back to the Sweet 16 against South Carolina that in, I believe, 2022 to 23 or 24 now, they got to the Sweet 16 again. This team had a different level. When they got Lauren Betts in the transfer portal, this team got exactly what they were missing prior to last season. Now, after some ups and downs, if you look a little more into Lauren Betts' personal story and what she's gone through, obviously some things were explained, like why she missed some of the games last year, what she was going through. But when the best player on the court realizes that they're the best player, something truly transformational happens and starts acting like it, demanding the basketball, dominating defensively. We've seen what happens when Juju Watkins did that against UCLA. We've seen that when Paige Beckers has dominated on the biggest stage, like a 40-point game in the Sweet 16 for her UConn Huskies as she's battling USC in the Elite Eight, could be a UCLA Final Four opponent. And Lauren Betts heading to that Big Ten tournament weekend, heading into the Big Ten tournament championship. It's like, okay, here we go. And then you head for UCLA into that Elite Eight matchup against LSU. Looks like it's going to be the same. Lauren Betts basketball, bucket layup, and then, two early fouls picked up where it's like, oh no, this is exactly how it's going to play out. Foul trouble, heartbreak. UCLA is going to have to scrap and claw their way to maybe a narrow loss in the Elite Eight. But that's the difference with what Cori Close did in the offseason. She targeted her weaknesses. She targeted people and players who would help make the program better and be ready to play when the lights were the brightest, the stage is the biggest, and when Lauren Betts isn't the one who is going to lead the team, nor was it Kiki Rice, you see Gabriela Jaquez steps up. Obviously, to me, Gardner's three-point shooting prowess was huge. It was an immense part of that game for UCLA beating LSU. And of course, the Tigers would not go away. Kim Mulkey's Fighting Tigers would not go away. So it says so much from a few years ago, missing the tournament entirely, going on a run, the WNIT, to now to the Final Four. I'm not sure we see many of those runs. Now it mixed in with the COVID, the introduction, and the explosion of the transfer portal to even the NIL dollars that are important now in the women's game. Like, that is an important piece, and some players wanting to go to bigger conferences, bigger markets, if you will, in college athletics, to go play for the biggest, best coaches, to get on the game's biggest stage, which is deep in the March Madness, deep in the NCAA tournament. And UCLA is almost cashing in at the right time. Close has always got those pretty good players, but never had that idea that she could go win the big one, go get the big games. Look at her history. Even talking to my own UCLA friends and group, it's like, hey, nah, Cori Close can't do it. And there she was, getting UCLA to their first Final Four in the NCAA era. Okay? Exactly what people might have not thought they could have done, or what they were going to seemingly fall short to do after how the first quarter played out. The best player sat out an entire quarter, played 6 minutes in the opening 20, and UCLA not only had a lead, but dominated with her out. For the first time in 2 to 3 months. And on the game's biggest stage against a team that's physical and rebounds and fights and gets everything to go their way, they found a way to motivate themselves because it felt like UCLA was sliding them. No, the Bruins were ready. They brought their depth, which has been a key piece to their success all year long. Their depth has always been deeper. It's always been better than 99% of the teams out there. When you have the most dominant center, the most dominant post in all of college basketball, you've got some elite talent at the point guard level, some scoring options, some, varied scoring options that can come in and shoot. That's why, to me, Gardner's recruitment from Oregon State to UCLA was huge, because it didn't put all the shooting on the shoulders of London Jones, who's turned more into another point guard role, can shoot it, can get red hot. And the emergence from Gabriela Jaquez from sophomore year to junior year as an all Big Ten honorable mention, that's why she got that honor. Because when she's on against the biggest and best teams, she can be elite. Now, sometimes teams with size or her teams who mark her can get the best of her offensive nights. She won't necessarily shoot the ball that well. Against LSU, bam, 3 to 4 threes. Gardner, 5 of 7, which we've known she can do when she had, 7 3-pointers earlier in the game, red hot this season, hit the game winner against Michigan State when Lauren Betts was out. Think about Gardner's best moments. Game-winning 3-pointer against the ranked opponent when UCLA came off one of their toughest defeats of the season, both against USC. Lauren Betts was out. We're like, they're on upset alert deep into the final minute at home, knocks down a 3. UCLA struggling. Gardner casually drains a few threes with Betts out. That's the difference. Finding those pieces, trusting those pieces, and that is why I think UCLA, who I've picked to win it all in my bracket since the beginning, I've talked about they should be the consensus number one. The disrespect shown by South Carolina, although I know during the broadcast they said Don texted Cori Close and said, we're not disrespecting you. We just think our team's been better. Well, I think it still is disrespect when a team destroyed you early in the season and you're trying to say we're better than you. No, it's not like South Carolina lost in a heartbreaker to UCLA on some bogus home officiating call. UCLA started the game with dominance from the opening tip to the final buzzer, and it was almost never in doubt against the Gamecocks. Not that would happen again, but people have just been sleeping on this UCLA team, on Cori Close for a while, and understandably so in some aspects. This seems like a different team. Now, if they run into the UConn Paige Bueckers buzzsaw, of course, the media darlings are all going to say, this is Bueckers' last season. She's ready to go be the number one pick in the W. She's going to come back, and this is her chance to be like a UConn great, do something that Caitlin Clark wasn't even able to do, and win a national championship. That's how it's all going to be built up to be if UConn gets past SC as expected. Now, when you're watching this, maybe you know the result of that game, but that's the hype. Or UCLA will be big favorites against USC. Well, those are the two storylines. Oh, Paige, a chance to get her own. Maybe they'll run into South Carolina. It'll be a UConn, South Carolina. No. UCLA has been the best team. They've been one of the best teams last year. Preseason number 2 prior to the last season. A little disrespected heading into this season. I've almost been slept on this entire year since they lost to a really good USC team a couple of times and still beat them. I think the committee got it right. They're the number 1 overall team in the country. Proved it. And they are taking this program to new levels, because if you win one this year, if you win a title, if they get deep, they're only getting better next year. Only getting much, much better. With people coming off injury, obviously the portal's open for business, and one of the best high school recruits in the country, Sienna Betts, who happens to be, of course, Lauren Betts' little sister. You can start off a dynasty and a legacy with what UCLA can achieve this week. And they've already taken steps to achieve their goals. Now let's go break down some more. Next, April 1st, which could represent April Fool's Day for some of us. Maybe it's optimism into this 2025 season for UCLA football. I'm always optimistic. Some people call me a fool. Some people call me pessimistic and, glass half empty nonsense. Whatever. Spring football begins. What should we look for? And what am I thinking heading into spring ball next on Locked On UCLA?
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the Bracket Breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
All right, the day we've all been waiting for. Spring ball is finally here. After the idea was floated by Deion Sanders that, hey, maybe we should have actual spring games where we play our players against another program's players, the idea of Colorado playing Syracuse, and the NCAA said no, maybe in the future, but some spring practices have already started, so we're not going to do that now. I think UCLA should absolutely want to play somebody in spring ball. I'm not sure who that would be. Maybe you play in ASU, maybe you play in Arizona, although that'd be funny with Jed Fish, or excuse me, not Jed Fish, obviously at Washington, but you get the picture. You go play in Arizona, you go play in ASU, you can go play those former Pac-12 schools that are now Big 12 and keep it close, or play somebody across the country and bring them to the warm weather into the Rose Bowl for a spring ball game. That is my opinion, that UCLA, if it does happen in the future, teams getting rid of spring games versus actual spring football games instead of this UFL nonsense, I think I would be all for that. Now, for UCLA heading into this new season, this new era of DeShaun Foster, the first spring practice he's going to have with a staff that isn't just hastily made, with just, all right, let's just put these pieces together, with what Chip Kelly left over, his staff, his players, his system. Now DeShaun Foster in the offseason went completely, almost wiped out the entire staff from recruiting standpoint, from strength and conditioning, to a lot of key spots like the offensive coordinator position with Tino Sunseri coming from Indiana. You bring in a JUCO super senior quarterback in Joey Aguilar, who will be the clear-cut number 1 heading into spring ball. And this is the idea that with this new offense, this new transition, that if Indiana was able to take a quarterback and make him a Heisman candidate and take their program to new heights, maybe Tino and UCLA with some more Kaika Malloy magic can surprise people in the Big Ten. I know I've been on the episode with Locked On College Football with Spencer, who always likes to rib us during Locked On Big Ten Squad. It's all in good fun. He also does love to hate if I'm ever on Locked On College Football as a guest. But, of course, the optics nationally are UCLA is a bit of a joke, right? Chip Kelly was simply waiting for that retirement gig he wanted to ring, got the ring at Ohio State, always wanted an NFL job, got the NFL job with the Raiders, got a lot of money, and now, of course, he's coaching with Pete Carroll and the Raiders. What a weird UCLA-USC coincidence. DeShaun has said, hey, we wanted to get a quarterback. He got a quarterback. UCLA, heading into spring ball, needs to separate. Hopefully, Joey Aguilar separates himself significantly from the one to the backup, which means his health and whoever starts in the offensive line is crucial. 2, well, we're obviously not going to see this develop over spring ball to a point where we can truly judge it. Can UCLA establish with the strong enough offensive line, with the maybe pieces patchworked mixed in with the transfer portal and returners, to be a decent blocking team in pass blocking and become a team that can run the football? That even with the mediocre offensive line, Chip Kelly was able to make them a solid running team in 2023, not one of his best. And then with Eric Bieniemy, they plummeted down the rankings and were one of the worst offensive lines in the country. Can they take that step forward with just simply a new scheme, a new philosophy, and a couple of new players, either in another year or with a new opportunity with UCLA? Next, let's go to the defensive side of football, right? Ikaika Malloy, you're losing some key players, Kane Madrano, Carson Schlesinger, Femi Oladejo, who came to UCLA for a couple of seasons after transferring over from Cal. A lot of movement on the defensive side of the football, except at the D coordinator position, which is crucial. And after all the noise was made about D'Anton Lynn going to USC, completely changing their terrible defense because USC stuck with Alex Grinch for way too long because Lincoln Riley, I can say choice words, whatever. They bought D'Anton Lynn. When UCLA had a coordinator with previous experience over at Washington and Ikaika Malloy, the passion, the drive, the relationship and recruiting to players, the ability to help develop like Leatu Latu to become a UCLA great, put guys in new situations like Femi Oladejo, put him off the edge at some points. Maybe with the D-line that was struggling to rush the passer at times, you are losing Jay Tui off that D tackle position, off the inside. UCLA, they brought a lot of DBs in. They have to mix in the lack of experience in the linebacker room with Isaiah Chisholm. You have to hope that the D-line gets much improved or with a little more experience after some guys left with some significant experience, and hopefully with a lot better help. If Ikaika Malloy can drum up more magic with this 2025 defense, which could be worse than it was in 2024, and that's no slide on Ikaika. If this UCLA defense plays to similar levels as last year or even surpasses it, the dude is deserving of a raise, is absolutely deserving of a raise. Now, I know UCLA seemingly brought every defensive back in the portal with Coach Martin, the new UCLA defensive backs coach, who has great relationships with recruiting and is hopefully going to bring a lot of guys, a lot of dudes in the secondary to UCLA from now into the future, whenever that is. Developing the linebacker room, getting and generating a pass rush is key to UCLA's success this season. Because if the Bruins get dominated in the trenches, yet again, the joke and the storyline and everything in every broadcast we'll be talking about is, hey, man, UCLA, Big Ten life, man, they still haven't figured it out in year 2. They can't get the O-line and the D-line. Well, it's still the recipe from Chip Kelly's lack of wanting to recruit and develop overall on the O-line and the D-line. After some elite talent on the D-line in 2023, got to realize, okay, the Bruins are always going to come back down to earth a little bit. You mix in a D coordinator change, and UCLA still put up some decent numbers, really solid numbers. Of course, there are some times they felt overwhelmed by some SEC O-lines a la LSU or some Big Ten offensive lines. But when Iowa came to town with their big offensive line, with their big-time running back, Bruins shut them down. They kept Rutgers with a team that loved to run the football. They kept them in check. They kept Nebraska in check, teams that are supposed to be big, mean, strong on the O-line. And the Bruins won all those football games, got red hot at the end of the year. A couple of games you missed out at late, and the Bruins are nearly a bowl-eligible team at the end of 2024. You put all those things together, and that's why there can be optimism that if Ikaika Malloy, the new offensive coordinator, which you expect UCLA to be leaps and bounds better than what they were offensively a year ago, not just leaning on a complicated West Coast offense that was struggling to work in Washington with the Commanders, and then you see it struggle to work in Westwood and Pasadena with UCLA, hopefully offensively, with an experienced quarterback that loves to throw the football all around, some new pieces in the O-line. They can click offensively, and defensively is where UCLA needs to be like, okay, if we can replicate last year's numbers and the offense takes a step forward, they are a 6-win team, which, okay, jokes. A 6-win team that could upset somebody big in 2025 and take that next step forward. I think that UCLA and the fans are wanting to see for DeShaun Foster. 6, 7, 8 wins would be seen as a step forward from a 5-7 campaign. 4-8, 5-7 wouldn't exactly be what we're wanting to see this next year, but there is a portion of the schedule where it's just tough life in Big Ten play. And some people are predicting UCLA to lose some of those non-conference games this year, where last year was against LSU. It was extreme tough battles in the non-con and a lot of travel last year. This year, less travel, and I think a more manageable non-conference schedule where the Bruins can come out and get the job done. Spring ball starts, and we'll be talking UCLA football, reading the reports, and of course, transfer portal and the UCLA women in the Final Four. All that and more on Locked On UCLA. So like, comment, subscribe, download, and we cannot wait to talk more UCLA. Hands up, Bruins fans. 8 clap time, baby. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA. UCLA. Fight, fight, fight. This has been Locked On UCLA. Zach signing off. Go Bruins.